When I first thought about saying these words out loud, I hesitated. There's a vulnerability in admitting you still care long after the world expects you to move on. But the truth is, some connections leave an imprint deeper than logic can explain. Sometimes, even after all the success, all the noise, and all the forward motion, a quiet thought of one person can still stop you in your tracks. I've spent years building, dreaming, chasing the impossible, yet beneath all that, there's always been this memory, a heartbeat that echoes differently. It's strange how the mind can forget faces in crowds, schedules, or deadlines, but the heart never forgets the person who once made it feel alive. I'm not here to romanticize the past or pretend everything was perfect. I'm here because I want to acknowledge something real, something that changed me. When you truly love someone, you don't measure that love in years or milestones. You feel it in the quiet moments, when you see something beautiful and instinctively wish they were there to see it too. And you feel it when you catch yourself remembering the sound of their laughter, not because it's convenient, but because it's the kind of sound that branded itself onto your soul. And for me, that feeling never fully faded. I've come to realize that sometimes we don't lose people because of distance or time. We lose them because of ego. Because we thought we had more time to say what mattered. We thought they'd always be there when we were ready to be honest. But love doesn't wait for our timing. It lives fully, fiercely, and then, sometimes, it leaves quietly, taking pieces of us with it. And when it's gone, we start to understand how much of who we are was shaped by that connection. If she's listening tonight, I hope she knows that not a day passes without gratitude. Gratitude for the way she challenged me, for the way she saw through my defenses, and for the way she believed in me, sometimes more than I believed in myself. She probably doesn't realize it, but her influence runs like a current through everything I've done since. The patience she tried to teach me, the empathy she wanted me to find, those lessons didn't vanish when we parted ways. They took root quietly and changed me in ways I didn't recognize until much later. The truth is, success, innovation, and ambition, they all mean something. But they're not substitutes for human connection. You can build empires, launch rockets, or change industries, but none of it replaces the warmth of knowing someone truly understood you. The woman I loved, she did. And that's why this confession matters. Because for all the achievements, I've learned that regret isn't about what you failed to build, it's about what you failed to say. So tonight, I'm saying it. I never forgot. Not the way she smiled when she caught me lost in thought. Not the way her silence spoke volumes when words couldn't fix what we broke. I remember the quiet nights filled with laughter and the arguments that came from caring too much. I remember how she believed in the best version of me, one I hadn't even met yet. And that's a kind of faith that stays with you forever. I'm not standing here asking for a second chance. I'm standing here because I believe some truths deserve to be spoken, even if they come years too late. Because life moves fast, and sometimes we think we're leaving the past behind when, in reality, it's walking beside us, shaping our every step. So, if by some impossible chance she hears this, maybe through a screen or a whispered clip shared by someone somewhere, I just want her to know this: you're not forgotten. You were never just a chapter. You were the part of the story that made the rest possible. And if love is truly the most powerful force in the universe, then this moment, this confession, is proof that even after all the distance, all the time, and all the change the heart remembers, it always remembers. I've learned something about mistakes. They don't disappear just because we move forward. You can bury them under success, drown them in work, or outrun them with ambition. But they find their way back. They sit quietly in the spaces between accomplishments, reminding you that progress doesn't erase what's unresolved. And for a long time, I tried to ignore that truth. Looking back, I see how pride played its part. I was so focused on being right, on defending my choices, that I forgot what mattered more was being kind. I thought strength meant standing firm, holding my ground, proving my logic. But love isn't a debate you win. It's a truth you nurture. And when you start keeping score, you've already lost the connection that made it meaningful in the first place. The mistakes weren't dramatic. No grand betrayal, no explosive ending. They were small, subtle choices that piled up. The unspoken words when she needed reassurance. The impatience when she deserved understanding. The moments I chose to stay silent, thinking time would fix what I didn't have the courage to face. Those are the ones that linger. Those are the ones that replay in your mind when everything else has quieted down. I think there's a certain arrogance in assuming people will always stay. That no matter how much you withdraw, or how many times you say, "I'm just busy right now," they'll wait. Love doesn't work that way. It's not a constant you can take for granted. It's an energy you have to give back, nurture, protect. And when I didn't, I watched it fade. Not suddenly, but slowly, like light dimming until one day, you realize you're standing in the dark. It's easy to blame circumstances, timing, distance, the demands of the world, but deep down I know it wasn't those things. It was me. I chose work over presence. I chose distraction over vulnerability. And I told myself it was noble, that I was doing it for the future, for something greater. But what's the point of building the future if you lose the person who believed in you before the world did? There's a moment I remember vividly, an argument that ended with her saying, "You're not listening." And she was right. I wasn't. I was hearing words but not feelings. I was analyzing, not understanding. That moment sticks with me because it was the beginning of the silence that followed. The kind of silence you can't fill with apologies, no matter how sincere. I've realized since then that accountability isn't about guilt. It's about growth. It's about saying, yes, I did that. I hurt someone I cared about. I was too proud to admit it, and too afraid to change it in time. And that acknowledgement doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove how capable we are, how resilient, how unstoppable. But maybe the real strength lies in saying, I was wrong. Owning your mistakes doesn't mean living in regret. It means learning to respect what you lost enough to understand why. It means using that pain as a compass. A reminder to do better, to be better, to love better the next time you get the chance. I've carried that lesson into everything I've built since. Because if you can't own your failures in love, how can you truly claim your successes anywhere else? I used to think that progress was about never looking back, but that's not true. Progress is about looking back with clarity, not to dwell, but to understand. To see the person you were and know you can become someone wiser. And maybe, in doing that, you honor the love you lost in a way that words never could. If she's hearing this somewhere, I want her to know. I see it now. Every misstep, every careless word, every time I chose silence when I should have spoken. I see it all. And I carry it not as a burden, but as a promise to never repeat it again. Because love isn't ruined by one mistake. It's ruined when you refuse to learn from it. And I've learned, in the hardest, most honest way possible, regret has a strange way of living with you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention. It whispers. It sits quietly in the background of your life, waiting for the still moments when the world slows down and there's nowhere left to hide. That's when it speaks the loudest. Not through words, but through the silence between them. I've learned that silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of everything left unsaid. There was a time I thought silence was strength, that holding back, staying composed, keeping emotions under control. That was maturity. But the truth is, silence can be a kind of cowardice. It's the space we retreat to when we don't know how to fix what we've broken. It's easier to build rockets, design machines, chase the next challenge, anything that feels like forward motion, than to sit with the discomfort of having hurt someone you love. A silence becomes the armor you wear to avoid vulnerability. And yet, that same armor keeps you from connection. When she left, I didn't say much. I told myself that she already knew how I felt, that time would bring clarity, that life had a way of working things out. But time doesn't heal what you never confront. It just deepens the gap between who you were and who you wish you had been. I kept busy? Maybe too busy. Work has a way of filling the space where emotions should be. But at night, when the world went quiet, I could feel the weight of everything I didn't say pressing down on me. There's something haunting about silence after love. It's not like noise fades. It's like the world around you becomes muted. You can be surrounded by people, by sound, by movement, and still feel a void. That's when you start to understand that the loudest echoes are the ones you created yourself. By not speaking, by not acting, by letting pride stand in the way of truth, I think about the small moments, the texts I never sent, the calls I didn't make, the apologies that stayed trapped behind hesitation. Each of those choices was a brick in a wall I didn't realize I was building, a wall between me and the person I cared for most. And by the time I noticed it, she was already on the other side. People often say time heals everything, but I don't think it does. Time gives you perspective, not healing. Healing comes from honesty with yourself and with others. And I wasn't honest soon enough. Let the silence speak for me, and it told the wrong story. It said I didn't care. It said I'd moved on. It said everything I didn't mean, and nothing I truly felt. It took me years to understand that silence can be louder than any argument. Words can hurt, yes, but silence can erase. It erases trust, warmth, connection. It creates doubt in the spaces where love once lived. And the cruelest part is that you don't realize what your silence is doing until it's too late to undo it. If I could go back, I'd break that silence in a heartbeat. I'd say the things I was too afraid to say. I'd tell her how much she mattered, how much she changed me, how sorry I was for not being brave enough to speak when it counted. But the truth about regret is that it doesn't offer do-overs, only lessons. And those lessons become part of who you are, shaping how you move through the world afterward. Now, when I think about that silence, I try to see it not as a void, but as a reminder. A reminder to speak when the heart is heavy, to reach out before pride convinces you not to say, I'm sorry, before silence becomes permanent. Because in the end, words are bridges, and silence is the space where bridges fall apart. If she's listening somewhere, I hope she knows that the quiet between us was never indifference. It was fear. And that fear, that failure to speak, is what I regret most. Because I've learned that silence doesn't protect love. It buries it. And love, no matter how strong, can't survive forever underground. Pain has a way of being the greatest teacher, even when it feels unbearable. When I look back now, I realize that the hardest moments, the heartbreak, the silence, the loss, weren't punishments. They were lessons. Lessons I didn't understand at the time, but ones that shaped the way I see everything now. Love, success, even purpose. It's strange how the same pain that once felt like it would break you becomes the foundation of your growth. For a long time, I thought pain was something to avoid, that discomfort meant something was wrong. I was trained to solve problems, to fix things, optimize, perfect. But love doesn't work like engineering. You can't design your way out of it. You can't debug human emotion. When it breaks, you feel it. And in feeling it, you grow. The version of me that stands here today isn't the same one who let her walk away. He was impatient, stubborn, maybe even scared of what real vulnerability required. But pain forced me to slow down. It demanded reflection. It showed me that growth doesn't happen when everything is going right. It happens when everything falls apart. There's something humbling about realizing that you're not always the hero in your own story. Sometimes you're the one who causes the pain, who has to live with the consequences. And when that happens, you can either spend your life running from it, or you can face it, dissect it, learn from it, let it reshape you. I chose eventually to learn. Not quickly, not gracefully, but honestly. I learned that listening is more powerful than explaining. That understanding someone's silence can mean more than filling it with words. And that love isn't proven by how much you say, but by how much you stay, even when it's hard. Pain taught me empathy. Before, I used to think empathy was simply feeling bad for someone. But real empathy is different. It's seeing the world through another person's eyes, even when it challenges your own. It's realizing that your perspective isn't the only one that matters. That truth was a hard one for me to accept. I was used to living in a world of absolutes. Things either worked or they didn't. But in love, there's nuance. There's emotion, timing, vulnerability, all the variables you can't calculate. And that unpredictability is what makes it human. I also learned patience. Real patience. Not the kind where you wait for something to happen, but the kind where you give space to others and to yourself, where you understand that people heal in their own time, and that not every ending needs to be rushed into closure. Sometimes growth means learning to live with open chapters, to find peace in not having all the answers. That was a hard one for me. I always wanted resolution, a reason, a fix, a next step. But pain doesn't always offer that. Sometimes it just offers silence and the challenge of finding meaning in it. And through it all, I realized that love isn't just about finding someone. It's about becoming someone. Becoming the person who deserves the kind of love you lost. The pain pushed me to build more than technology or ideas. It pushed me to build character. It reminded me that no amount of innovation or success means anything if you can't understand the basic human need to connect. Because at the end of the day, all of us, no matter how much we achieve, still want the same thing: to love and be loved without fear. If she could hear me now, I'd want her to know that the pain of losing her wasn't wasted. It became fuel. Not for ambition, but for awareness. It made me see people differently. It made me listen better, care deeper, and appreciate the rare moments when someone truly believes in you. She taught me that love doesn't always stay, but its lessons do. And those lessons, if you're brave enough to learn from them, become the very things that help you move forward, because growth isn't born from comfort. It's born from pain, the kind that breaks you open, only to show you who you really are. Time changes almost everything. It changes how we think, how we move through the world, even how we see ourselves. But there are a few rare things it can't touch. Love, the real kind, is one of them. It doesn't stay the same. It evolves, it matures, it reshapes itself around who you become. But it never truly disappears. It lingers in your memory, in your choices, in the quiet moments when your heart still recognizes what your mind tries to forget. I've lived enough years and seen enough change to understand that love doesn't have to be constant to be eternal. You don't have to see someone every day or even talk to them again for them to still exist inside you. Because real love, the kind that shifts your axis a little, leaves something behind. It's like gravity, invisible, unspoken, but always there, quietly influencing the orbit of everything you do. Sometimes I'll catch myself thinking about her, not with sadness, but with a kind of peace. There's a stillness that comes with acceptance. You stop wishing to go back, and instead, you just feel grateful that it happened at all. The memories stop feeling like ghosts and start feeling like lessons. The sound of her voice, the spark in her laugh, the way she could bring out a version of me I didn't know existed. Those things don't fade. They become part of the way you see beauty, the way you define connection. It's funny how we spend so much of life trying to control everything. Outcomes, plans, timing. But love doesn't operate on our schedules. It arrives unannounced, changes everything, and sometimes it leaves before we're ready. Yet even after it's gone, it stays with you in ways you can't explain. It's there in the way you approach people afterward, in how you listen, how you care, how you forgive. It becomes the quiet force that softens you, humbles you, and reminds you that no matter what you build or achieve, the most profound parts of being human are felt, not measured. I used to think that moving on meant forgetting, or at least trying to. But I've learned that moving on is really about transforming what love was into what it means now. It becomes less about longing and more about honoring. You stop wanting the person back, and you start carrying what they gave you, the lessons, the warmth, the inspiration. Love in that form endures beyond time because it's no longer dependent on presence. It's become part of your DNA. Sometimes people ask if I ever wish things had turned out differently. Of course, there's a part of me that does. But there's another part that recognizes the beauty in how things unfolded. Because maybe that love wasn't meant to last forever in the traditional sense. Maybe it was meant to awaken something in me that couldn't have surfaced any other way. Maybe she was never meant to stay. Maybe she was meant to remind me what staying truly means. I've met many people since, crossed paths with incredible minds, shared conversations that changed how I think. But there's something distinct about a love that comes from truth. not convenience. A love that existed before everything got complicated, before ambition, before the noise. That kind of love becomes a reference point. It's where your heart learned its language, and no matter how fluent you become in everything else, you never forget the sound of your first true translation. I don't carry that love as regret anymore. I carry it as gratitude, a quiet reminder that life's most valuable experiences aren't always the ones that last, but the ones that leave you different. The ones that teach you that connection about time spent together, it's about the impact left behind. And even though the world keeps spinning faster and faster, there are moments, faces, and feelings that stay still inside you. They don't age. They don't fade. They just become part of your truth. If she's somewhere out there, living a completely different life, I hope she knows that time hasn't erased her from my heart. And not in a way that clings, but in a way that honors. Because some loves don't end. They simply transform. They evolve into wisdom, into gratitude, into the quiet understanding that what was once shared between two people can still illuminate a lifetime. And maybe that's the unchanging truth about love. It doesn't die with time, it just learns to live differently. There comes a moment when you realize that apologies, no matter how sincere, are not always meant to bring someone back. Sometimes they're simply meant to set both people free. That's what this is. Not a plea, not a request for forgiveness, but a message sent into the universe in the hope that it reaches her heart in some small way. Because even if our paths never cross again, I'd like her to know that she mattered deeply, endlessly, and in ways words will never fully capture. If she's listening somewhere, I want her to know that life has taken me through storms and triumphs, through noise and silence, and yet there are moments, rare and quiet, when I still think of her, not in sadness but in awe. Because some people enter your life not to stay forever, but to shift the trajectory of who you become. She did that for me. Her presence changed the way I see love, the way I understand compassion, the way I define strength. And though time has moved on, I still carry that transformation with me. I've come to understand that love doesn't always end with closure. Sometimes it ends with acceptance. Acceptance that the story was beautiful, even if it was brief. Acceptance that two people can walk different paths and still honor what they once shared. It took me years to understand that healing isn't about erasing someone from your heart. It's about learning to live with their memory in peace. And I've reached that place now. The ache that once felt unbearable has turned into gratitude. Gratitude for having loved at all. There's a part of me that hopes she found what she was looking for. Happiness, balance, maybe even the kind of love that makes her feel seen every day. Because if you truly care about someone, even after everything, you want that for them. You want them to be surrounded by laughter, by people who bring light into their world. You want them to wake up without heaviness, without doubt, without regret. And if I ever played even a small part in helping her reach that peace, then that's enough for me. I've realized that saying, "I'm sorry," isn't just about acknowledging the past. It's about shaping who you are in the present. It's about recognizing that love, at its purest, leaves you more human, more open, more aware of how fragile connection can be. Every mistake I made, every moment I let slip away, every silence that replaced what should have been spoken, they all became lessons. And those lessons are what I carry forward, not as burdens, but as reminders to be better, in how I love, how I listen, how I show up. Sometimes at night, when the world feels still, I imagine what I'd say if I could speak to her one more time. Not to change anything, but to share what I've learned. I'd tell her that she was right about so many things, about slowing down, about listening, about choosing presence over pride. I'd tell her that her influence never faded, that it's woven into the person I've become. I'd tell her that she was loved, truly, even if imperfectly, and that love like that never really leaves you. It just evolves, softens, and becomes part of the quiet strength you carry through life. And if she ever wondered whether I've forgotten, the answer is no. I never could. Because forgetting would mean erasing a part of my story, and she was a part that defined it. I don't hold on to the pain anymore, only to the truth that she helped me discover what love can be. That kind of truth doesn't fade. It lives on in the way you treat others, in the way you forgive yourself, in the way you continue to hope. So wherever she is, whether she's watching the sunset somewhere, laughing with friends, or simply living a life that feels full, I hope she feels peace. I hope she knows that her story left an imprint that time could never wash away. And if by some miracle these words ever reach her, I hope she understands the heart behind them, not to reopen the past, but to honor it. Because love doesn't always end with a grand reunion or a perfect resolution. Sometimes it ends right here, at a whisper, in a confession, in the truth that even after all these years, I'm still sorry. And I always will be